Hello, Rick here with part 2 of a timeline covering the build-up to Star Trek Picard from 2383 to the supernova that destroyed Romulus and several other worlds in 2387. I've already covered what happened from roughly the end of Star Trek Nemesis to 2383 in part 1, which I'll link here. Beware that this video contains mild spoilers for Star Trek Picard, the prequel materials of The Last Best Hope, and the Countdown comic book series. I'm not going to reiterate the canonicity of the books here, as that was all covered in part 1. Although a quick point that has been needlessly obscured throughout the series is the exact origin of the supernova, and while it has no bearing on the plot, it's been a pet peeve of mine until the latter half of The Last Best Hope, which does indeed confirm it as the Romulan system's own sun. So, fresh at the start of 2383, Admiral Picard had ordered the USS Dignity to cross the neutral zone into Federation space with its Romulan evacuees. Its destination is the Federation world of Terrasa, which had volunteered its own planet as a site to accommodate the fleeing Romulan populace. This comes fresh off the news that revised estimates of the Romulan supernova paint it as far bigger and faster than expected. The Admiralty backs Picard's treaty violation publicly, although some, such as Captain Clancy, continue to privately express doubts about Picard's actions. The ambitious young Olivia Quest from the outer Federation world of Estelen begins to voice concerns that smaller colonies like hers are having little say in this new move by the Federation, but it is their worlds which are going to be feeling the impact as more resources are diverted to constructing the new Romulan settlements rather than the existing UFP worlds. After 6 weeks, the USS Verity arrives above Inkstis, a settlement on which the Quat Milat reside. Here Captain Picard beams down to meet with the nuns and learns of their stark opposition to common Romulan practice as they shun secrets. It is here too that Picard first meets the young Elnor, who takes a shine to the elderly Admiral. Inkstis is to be relocated to the Federation colony of Vashti, and Olivia Quest rallies more support, citing numerous UFP colony worlds in need of the resources and time that the Federation is spending on the Romulans, including the Nitys spaceport renovation, transporters for Burke, and Telote's moons needing terraforming. The Federation colony of Vashti is used to house many Romulan refugees. Despite Quest's campaigns, the evacuation continues unhindered over the next couple of months, and the Quat Milat are of great help in keeping the populace of Inkstis relaxed over the Odyssey to their new home. Arriving on Vashti, a settlement is set aside and further fabrication beginning for the Romulan populace. Meanwhile on Romulus, Nokim Vritet, the Romulan scientist who first noted the Romulan star's change in life cycle, has independently confirmed fresh data that the star will supernova far sooner than expected with greater range and speeds. He too, just like Cambridge, realises that there is no seeming natural cause for the event and speculates that the incident has nefarious origins. His information is prevented from going public, however, by Tal Shiar propaganda, which continues to downplay the incoming disaster. Captain Clancy herself visits the Romulan colony of Vashti to see the progress, and in no small part to the Quat Milat, the project is coming along nicely. This does much to reaffirm public belief in Picard's mission, and eventually the USS Verity departs with its rescue fleet to continue its relocation missions. However, the world of Nimbus 3 is next up, and it has long been a sore spot for the Federation. In 2384, the Romulan government openly criticises the Federation's data on the supernova and accuses them of fear-mongering. For the sake of public relations, the UFP metaphorically holds its tongue, but these sorts of comments are turning many Federation citizens against the Romulan government for being ungrateful for their aid. While on the opposite side, some Romulans are beginning to believe that Federation aid comes at the cost of disregarding Romulan culture. The USS Verity arrives on Nimbus 3 and is having trouble negotiating with its stubborn leaders when the Tal Shiar arrive in orbit and state that Romulus has directed them to take over the evacuation. Bound by non-interference policies and the Romulans' request, Picard returns to the USS Verity, but remains in orbit over the next 10 days. In secret, the Tal Shiar resort to brute force, executing 50 dissenters from Nimbus 3 to persuade the others to leave. Footage of this killing, an event not witnessed by Admiral Picard, is leaked to the Federation News Network, who released the video. Admiral Picard was naturally shocked by this and suspected that the Romulans must have had a secret Tal Shiar base on Nimbus 3 that they didn't want Starfleet uncovering by mistake, hence the rapid and harsh usurpation of the evacuation on this world. Needless to say, this raises tensions on both sides, for Starfleet not intervening and for the Tal Shiar acting as they did. After a further 6 months of relocation, Bruce Maddox, along with Agnes Jurati, begin to work on the idea of fractal neuronic cloning, to take some existing positronic neurons and duplicate them in an attempt to create a new brain. 2385 rolls around, and while evacuation efforts continue, Romulus is quietly beginning its extraction of those influential, wealthy and elite individuals who are scurried away in secret. Meanwhile, Olivia Quest meets with several colony worlds that are beginning to consider secession from the Federation in favour of forming their own coalition to help themselves, concerned at the effective loss of the neutral zone and the increase of Romulan presence near their systems. Dorax and Intasa are among these worlds. In response to these concerns, the Federation begins to withdraw some small resources and ships from the Romulan relief effort in favour of supporting these worlds that are feeling forgotten. It is around this time that Picard's Verity arrives at Uyat Beta and during events here uncovers a native populace of non-Romulans and meets Zaban and Laris, 2 ex-Tal Shiar agents who abandoned the organisation because they secretly got married and want out. Picard employs them as hands on his vineyard to extract them. Eventually, however, the Star Empire is forced to concede that they are running out of time, and in turn, Ambassador Suld of Romulus directly asks Picard's fleet to assist in the evacuation of Vegero, the closest colony world to Romulus. Starfleet immediately halts its recall of assets and sends 32 ships in total to evacuate the major world, which hasn't even begun to evacuate. Meanwhile, at Utopia Planitia, ship construction is proceeding on schedule, and they should have the fleet ready to relocate the bulk of remaining worlds with ease. However, one small concern is Maddox's lack of a timely delivery of more A500s. Upon arriving at Vegero, Picard is confronted by the full ineptitude of the Romulan government's evacuation effort, which has taken itself off-world and left a substantial number of citizens behind. It's around this time that Ambassador Spock finally withdraws from Romulus, taking with him as many survivors as his small ship can carry. In mid-2385, the synthetics of Mars attack the facility, turn its planetary defences against the shipyards, and slaughter all the workers there. Starfleet attempts to respond, but Mars's stratosphere ignites, and evacuation becomes impossible. All on its surface are declared dead. Picard's fleet ferries the evacuees of Vegero to Vashti, where he beams down to meet with the Kuat Milat again. It's now that he receives a call informing him of the attack on Utopia Planitia. Admiral Picard is immediately recalled with his fleet to Starfleet HQ on Earth. LaForge, who was on Earth at the time of this attack, tracks down Bruce Maddox and discovers that the scientist had been continuing his work on positronic brains alongside the Synth project, and speculation circles that Maddox may have gotten carried away and unwittingly granted the A500s the ability to become sentient. Maddox continues to claim that his synths could not be capable of independent thought, but there's little left on Mars to confirm his claims. Ideas are split on what exactly caused the incident, with some blaming Maddox's programming, and some like Picard suggesting that the synths evolved beyond their design and rebelled, while some like Raffi Musica begin searching for a conspiracy behind the whole incident. Admiral Picard beams down to San Francisco to argue that Starfleet continue to provide support to the Romulan mission, but Starfleet is concerned that after losing their shipyards, they will not be able to produce more vessels for some time and therefore need every available ship to continue to maintain a presence in Federation space. The Federation Council also bans all research into synthetic life beyond the theoretical, as the cause of the attack still remains unknown. As the Romulan relief mission was tied so heavily to the synth production, it also loses much support, and the Federation Council votes to cancel the mission. Admiral Picard threatens to resign if they do so, and CNC Bordson accepts his resignation. Maddox closes down the Daystrom Institute's synthetic production and takes his research, going into hiding to continue his life's work. In 2386, Olivia Quest helps the Federation remain unified by helping those outer colony worlds, and the Federation begins dividing power more equally within its internal partners. Meanwhile, most of the Romulan projects are left to the settling Romulans to manage, with varying degrees of success, and the Star Empire continues trying to evacuate those it wishes to save, while leaving many worlds as a lost cause. The Federation does appeal to the Klingons and Cardassians to help the Romulans too, but to no avail. Captain Clancy is promoted to Admiral in Picard's absence, and the next in line to be the Commander-in-Chief. In early 2387, Ambassador Spock appeals to Vulcan, not as a Federation world, but as the Romulans' cousins, to help despite the Federation's withdrawal. Eventually he receives authorization to use red matter to collapse the supernova, and they grant him the use of the jellyfish craft designed by LaForge to fly into Romulan space. However, the time it took to authorize this cost Romulus as the supernova detonates and consumes the adopted homeworld. Flying into the blast radius, he is intercepted by a vengeful Romulan miner, Nero, and his crew of the Narada. But Spock is able to deploy the red matter and collapse the supernova, preventing much devastation and saving many other endangered worlds. To the outside galaxy, however, the Ambassador appears to be consumed by the resulting black hole. Picard spends over a decade in his manor, taking up the family business and writing history texts on the side. Raffi is eventually dismissed from Starfleet due to personal issues affecting her work, but this is as far as we know. As Star Trek Picard picks up in 2399, we still have a further 12 years of time, where the Federation pulled itself together and the Romulan Star Empire collapsed, with the Free State and Rebirth movements rising in its place. This time also saw the rise of criminal organisations taking advantage of the power vacuum in the former neutral zone area, while other organisations formed to oppose them. But none of these have exact dates really, so it's all a little hazy until we get some more filler. I mentioned that the book The Last Best Hope does a better job than the show of showing the change within Starfleet and explaining how things unravelled. When Picard starts, you just have to accept those changes and it can be a little jarring. Bearing in mind, however, that this book does take you from A to B, meaning it ends on quite a downer because it ends with the calamity, putting Picard in a dark place, ready to continue. And looking at where the series starts, I'm glad we skipped the 14 or so years where Picard was brooding in his chateau and instead began with him getting back into space. But in both these, we only follow that arm of Starfleet. While the evacuation was indeed its biggest concern at the time, the Federation and Starfleet was also continuing to run business as usual. I enjoyed this read, because I'm a lore fiend and love character development and world building, both of which this book has in spades, and admittedly is mostly left to assumption if the show is your only point of reference. I'm thinking of doing a video on the pros and cons of this sort of cross-media world building, so if that sounds like a discussion you'd like to weigh in on, stay tuned for that. Until that video, or any other review, gameplay or lore episode, I've been Rick, and thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Thanks again, and goodbye.